Hello, what's up guys? Disclosure Artist here. I've been trying to make this video for a long time and it seems like life just keeps getting in the way somehow. So I'm really kind of just, even in this moment now, forcing it to go through because I just need to be heard. And I intended for the information in this video to be originally in my video where I'm discussing my list of what I consider to be indisputable truths because of the overwhelming amount of evidence in favor of those strong likelihoods. But I ended it on a kind of neutral note, whereas in this video I'm going to perhaps continue and take it down a more colorful path. Okay, so what I offer in this video is my own personal take on what I've come to understand about what's going on with regards to current surface population, humanity, current timeline, and the power grip that we have over us. So maybe what's going on here is, if you guys have ever seen The Fifth Element, I'm sure lots of you have, the primary antagonist, Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg. Zorg is explaining to one of the protagonists, I guess, that being a very rich and powerful businessman, that his whole philosophy of life is to basically create chaos in order to stimulate life. He shows him the example by pushing a glass off of his desk and it shatters on the floor, and then a whole bunch of different little robots come out and not only clean up the mess but disinfect the area and etc., etc. And he proceeds to explain how the people who made those robots now can afford to feed their family because there's a supply and demand, and it's the whole idea of stimulating growth amongst society, as if some invisible hand is playing a big game of SimCity. The fact that we can even play our own game of SimCity on a computer is pretty amazing. I mean, you can understand that through a one-way mirror or two-way mirror, whatever, where one person can see through and spy on somebody on the other side, how a game of SimCity is being played here in our world with us as avatars. In the Matrix, for example, the conditions force the one to reveal themselves and to bring about the new world. They're born inside, they fulfill their destiny, and history repeats itself. In fact, in the Matrix, they say that it's the 6th time that it's happened. And from what I understand, this is the 6th buildup of humanity we've had before we were upgraded, before we destroyed ourselves, before we were started over again. If time is not real and we have an illusion of linear time, then that means that our history is not really definable as far as one solid explanation of what happened. This is why we find things that are completely out of place, even for the wildest timeline to follow, because according to whatever perspective or point of view one is viewing humanity's timeline, for example, it's going to be a different story in a different order, considering we're surrounded by time-traveling beings. And things are happening in multiple dimensions and in different realities. And what I've come to understand is there's no winning or losing. Good and evil are in constant battle against each other in the cosmos, keeping each other in balance, maintaining it, much the way that in Dr. Parnassus, when he's sitting there meditating. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, I did a whole half an hour breakdown analysis of the Illuminati, and that's a whole nother video. But in that scene where Christopher Plummer's character is sitting there meditating, and Tom Waits' character, he plays the devil, he visits him, and he explains, he asks him what happens if you stop meditating, and he takes away all of their mouths, and basically the world continues. He's trying to make a point that it doesn't matter if you meditate or not, life goes on, and that's because somewhere else in the world where, he's not taking away their mouths, someone else is continuing that chant. And it's just a example of the duality between good and evil that is never won or lost. It's little battles. It's always ongoing, yin and yang. There is no good that is all good without a little bit of darkness in it, and likewise, nothing is completely evil. There's always some light to that side as well. ETs, I stated in my last video, are obviously here walking amongst us. The fact that they can read our mind and manipulate our thoughts because they know the ape thought pattern, they can manipulate man with distractions and sexual blackmail and everything that's going on here that I've discussed in previous videos. Yeah, we're monitored by higher intelligence, obviously, and they basically are karmically stuck to us because they are breaking our free will, and that is going against cosmic law. If we want what's going on here to stop, we have to stop doing it ourselves. The fact that we, for example, eat animals, animals eat us, obviously. We're not the number one on any food chain. Everything's relative to whatever it is. So, if reptilians are eating us and we're eating chickens, it's no different. So, but higher frequential beings see this as Ouroboros. They see this as the universe eating itself, since we're all one, and the universe just wants to experience itself, and it doesn't judge any experience for what it is. It just wants to gain as much data as it can, neither looking at one experience as either negative or positive. It just wants the data. So it's really us who decides which is which, and of course they know based on our intention which is which. So because of the energy that we vibrate for whatever action we take in this life, in this incarnation, in this 3D matrix simulation that we're in. This is just the tip of the iceberg. So, basically, we're under a reptilian installation of control that, from what I understand, was put here 15,000 years ago and is still operational as we speak. They basically came in because, one of their abilities, evolutionarily speaking, assuming that these reptilians I'm referring to, not all reptilians are bad, I'm not a speciesist, I'm just stating that some of these alleged Alpha Draconians are the ones responsible for a great deal of human suffering and calamity in this world. But assuming they, just evolved from the creatures that are on this planet, one of the survival tactics of the reptilian species is that they use fear for survival. You can look at some of the desert lizards that fan out their necks like a hood in order to create fear in their would-be predator. And this, taken into an evolutionary context, has placed them in a position where, if they're millions of years more advanced than we are, they're still using fear tactics in order to keep us divided, scrambled, discombobulated, etc. So with these abilities are also shape-shifting, as chameleons can change their color and their texture, etc. Again, this evolved, and there are many beings that can change their appearance and have manipulated humanity in our ancient past by appearing in the guise of our elites and doing things on behalf of our species, fooling us into thinking that they're human, and they're not. And then, of course, putting our actual human elites in position of power on essentially what is a ghetto planet, prison planet. It just reminds me of a movie that I saw when I was young. It was made in the 80s. Romancing the Stone. There's a line, there's a character, it's a scene at the end of the movie. It's Danny DeVito. He's a low-life character. He's about to get apprehended by the authorities, and he has a partner in crime who happens to be his cousin, who's making a quick getaway and is probably going to be totally fine, whereas Danny DeVito's character is probably going to jail. And he's assuring him as he's sailing away scot-free that he's going to come back to him. He's going to come back for him because they're family. I think it's his cousin. And he goes, with completely see-through garbage reassurance, he goes, we're family. You'll come back for me. You're not going to leave me here. He goes, no. Would I hurt me, Would we do this to ourselves? Would we do all of the things that we're observing in the world today to ourselves? Death, disease, corruption, pollution, everything. Sending our brainwashed youth to fight an invisible enemy and ultimately pay the price with their lives, generation after generation, simply because they could play us like a fiddle. It's just super insulting. They basically, every time I listen to the radio, and I happen to hear quite a bit of it because I spend a good amount of time in the car, the most things that you hear advertised product-wise are paper towels, toilet paper, basically just, diaper, anything that is to help us clean up a mess. It's as if they think we're useless eaters who are only good for making a spill. I mean, I'd like to hear a commercial about a new chip upgrade for the teleportation system that allows you to go from east to west coast without your hair getting frizzy, because the previous model, by the time you got there, you looked like Bride of Frankenstein. So that would be a useful commercial, but no. I have to hear about products for wiping the drool from our bubbling lips like we're just completely useless babies. It's insulting, and I think we've got the whole clean up the mess technology down. You know what I'm saying? Paper towels, high-tech shit, as George Carlin would say. One of the most recent whistleblowers on the Gaia Network, their flagship program, Tim Tactical Advisor, he was asked by tenured veteran, Emery Smith, at this point. What do you say to the idea that we may be living in a holographic universe? He's from Germany and potentially from the future. So I'm just going to quote him right here. He says, "We live in a creative, observer-centered, mental-based reality that can be everything you put your dedication upon." Some uplifting words. And I agree with that. And he also said that there's life forms that specifically create the holographic realities, and they craft the situations that allow us to have specific experiences. And so this is a completely foreign concept to the way that we experience reality. But again, it just goes back to the Doctor Strange stuff that I was mentioning earlier. It's not just a slave planet, it's also an opportunity for growth.